West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Well, we also have a new indication tonight that Attorney General Merrick Garland, and this may be the biggest news of the night, that Merrick Garland has authorized the Justice Department to investigate Donald Trump and the Trump White House. This comes in a letter from the Justice Department to the House Oversight Committee refusing a request from the committee to provide an inventory of 15 boxes of White House records that Donald Trump took illegally to Florida when he moved out of the White House. In a letter reviewed by the Washington Post, Acting Assistant Attorney General Peter Hine wrote, quote, "The department previously asked National Archives and Records Administration not to share or otherwise disclose to others information relating to this matter in order to protect the integrity of our ongoing work. The Justice Department policy is generally to not announce federal criminal investigations. Sometimes we discover that federal investigations are underway when people receive subpoenas to testify to grand juries. There are several ways that it can leak out and become public information that a Justice Department investigation is underway." And this letter to Congress, this letter is one of those ways. A letter to Congress from the Justice Department refusing to turn over information to, quote, protect the integrity of our ongoing work. That is the single strongest indication yet that Donald Trump is, tonight, the subject of a federal investigation. Neil Katyal of the Obama Justice Department will join us in a moment with his interpretation of that news-making letter from the Justice Department. There is another ongoing investigation of someone who worked in the Trump White House. And this one is about exactly, and I mean exactly, the kind of voter fraud Donald Trump kept warning against during the 2020 presidential campaign. North Carolina is investigating Donald Trump's last White House chief of staff, Mark Meadows, for fraudulently voting in the 2020 election from a fake address in North Carolina. The Macon County Board of Elections confirmed to NBC News that Meadows was removed from the voter rolls, citing, quote, documentation indicated he lived in Virginia and last voted in the 2021 election there. Like all cases of voter fraud, Mark Meadows' illegal voting had no effect on the outcome of the election. Donald Trump won North Carolina by 74,483 votes. If Mark Meadows and his wife are found to have both fraudulently voted from an address where they have never lived, then Donald Trump's real winning margin in North Carolina would go all the way down to 74,481 votes. Donald Trump has not yet condemned Mark Meadows for appearing to commit voter fraud in North Carolina. But at least Donald Trump didn't say it was genius. Donald Trump reserves that kind of praise for Vladimir Putin's murderous rampage in Ukraine. Rudolph Giuliani, as Rachel just said, may be offering some cooperation to the prosecutors who are investigating his activities in Ukraine. Giuliani is by far the most disgraced former U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, and it is that same office that is investigating Giuliani after conducting raids last year to obtain Giuliani's records and electronic devices at his home and office in New York City. CNN is reporting that Giuliani recently helped federal investigators unlock several electronic devices that were seized in the raids a year ago. Two other lawyers who worked with Donald Trump met with the January 6th committee today, Trump White House counsel Pat Cipollone and his deputy Patrick Philbin. They met with the committee. They did not testify under oath. And here's the interesting tidbit the New York Times is reporting tonight. Trump authorized them to engage with the panel, according to a person familiar with the matter. A person who might be Donald Trump. One of the people on trial in Washington this week for his part in the insurrection at the Capitol is asking a jury to find him not guilty because Donald Trump made him do it. 38-year-old Dustin Thompson drove with a friend from Columbus, Ohio to Silver Spring, Maryland, took an Uber into Washington, D.C. on the morning of January 6th, and before long, he was in the Senate Parliamentarian's office, where he decided to steal a coat rack. Thompson is charged with 6 counts, obstructing Congress, joint session to certify the Electoral College vote, theft of government property, entering or remaining in a restricted building or grounds, disorderly or disruptive conduct in a restricted building or grounds, disorderly or disruptive conduct in a Capitol building, and parading, demonstrating, or picketing in a Capitol building. Thompson's defense attorney, Sam Szymanski, is arguing in court that Donald Trump, quote, authorized this assault. It was a plot. It was a scheme. It was a conspiracy that began at the highest levels of our government. Donald Trump encouraged people like Dustin Thompson to storm the Capitol.
When you have the President of the United States grooming you to believe that the election was stolen, our democracy is at stake, fight like hell, we're never going to concede. It's either you get down to the Capitol and I'll be right there with you, or else an illegitimate president is going to take office. So it's not hard, at least from my perspective, to understand how vulnerable, unsophisticated, politically speaking, people who've been fed this diet of BS would behave in accordance with their president's wishes.
That was Dustin Thompson's lawyer with Chris Hayes earlier tonight. Dustin Thompson testified in his own defense today, saying, quote, I thought the election was rigged to put Biden in office. Thompson now says that he realizes he was misled. Thompson told the jury, quote, if the president is giving you almost an order to do something, I felt obligated to do that. Like I had to do something to gain his respect or like approval. Dustin Thompson told the jury he believed he, quote, was following presidential orders to go to the Capitol, but that he is now, quote, deeply ashamed. That was the phrase he used. Deeply ashamed. Donald Trump is not deeply ashamed for telling Dustin Thompson to go to the Capitol and telling Dustin Thompson and the rest of them the lie that he, Donald Trump, would go with that crowd to the Capitol. Rudy Giuliani looks like someone from a planet where shame does not exist. And Mark Meadows is not deeply ashamed for voting in a state where he did not live, using an address where he has never lived. Dustin Thompson's shame is well earned, and his lawyer is trying to convince a jury that shame should be the only penalty that he has to endure for an attack on democracy. But would he feel any shame at all if he didn't get caught?
It is Thursday, the 14th of April of 2022, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays, a little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. Well, speaking of spice, a little bit of spicy Texas is happening right now, and I'm talking about Greg Abbott and his manipulation of the U.S. food supply and the cost of such by his embargo at the U.S. border, preventing food from coming into the United States. Not just food, but electronics, a lot of other stuff, but food too. While the whole world is in a food crisis right now because of Russia attacking the breadbasket of the world. There won't be much wheat or anything else coming out of that area for a while. And Greg Abbott, who is awash in Russian rubles, yes, because by dint of the fact that he is just merely a Republican who has taken money from the NRA and other dark money groups that have some Russian rubles circulating through their coffers. And I'm not kidding. And he is manipulating the cost of these commodities and these foodstuffs to make Joe look bad. How is it that a little petty dictator in a wheelchair, and I'm sorry, is that ableist of me? How is it possible that this little schmuck is able to do what he's able to do? Isn't he violating international trade set by the United States government? These trucks have already been inspected by the feds. Isn't he violating the Interstate Commerce Act? I know Merrick Garland has a lot on his plate, but maybe he ought to file a lawsuit. Some lawyer in the DOJ has to file a lawsuit against the state of Texas for doing these illegal acts. Of course, that's what Abbott wants, because then he can claim, the federal government is keeping us from being free. And then you got Elon Musk, driving the cost of the Twitter stock down so that he can now try to buy it 100%. I don't understand how that works. The SEC is already investigating him for driving the stock down while trying to take a majority stake on the board. A listener and follower on Twitter reminded me that this is right out of the Boski playbook. 80s manipulation. Yeah. Hostile takeover. Poison pill. Merrick, this is in your wheelhouse, buddy. You got a bunch. I know that there's not enough lawyers to prosecute the damn seditionists that stormed the Capitol. How that's possible, I don't know. Unless the whole institution of the United States, every institution itself of the United States, was gutted by the previous administration and a mob takeover. Talk about hostile takeover and poison pill. Can you tell I'm livid? I am. Let's also remind ourselves, Elon Musk is no genius. He's no inventor. He does not hold an engineering degree. All right? He inherited wealth from blood emeralds. He is being sued and has been convicted of apartheid at his Tesla plants. And there's another apartheid trial going on right now. A judge did cut the award to a employee who endured the racism. I believe it was at the San Leandro plant. They say it's Silicon Valley, but it's San Leandro. Cross the bay. Not quite the Silicon Valley. We refer to it affectionately as the East Bay, but hey. So, down near Hayward. I guess that doesn't count. Anyway, Another trial is coming out of that same plant for the same apartheid measures that Tesla was convicted of before. Granted, a judge did cut the awards to the employee who had prevailed and was awarded, I think, $143 million. He's cut it down to 15. I guess because Elon needs all the money he can get to try to buy Twitter. Richest man in the world. There ought to be a law. I think there was, but, they got rid of him because rich people know everything. All right. I still don't understand how he could buy Twitter 100% or even 0.1% or 0.00001% while he's under investigation by the SEC for manipulating the stock of that company to begin with. All right. Such a frat boy. Okay, I don't know. This is what happens when people can get through a university, a top-notch university at that, I believe Stanford, isn't it? And not ever take a humanities class. Yeah, it's bad enough they don't take ethics. How about just humanities? Might help. All right. So we're in a war on many fronts. We got Vlad doing what he's doing. We got Abbott doing what he's doing, plus all the other Republican governors in the United States. What are they going to do? Party in Moscow on July 4th? I wouldn't put them above it. And then later on at the chef's table, we're going to have to speak about Marine Le Pen ever so briefly, but we have to. All right. Yeah, she's already laid down the gauntlet. She's partied in Moscow, too, on, Bastille Day, I think. Some people think, or some people in America call that, the French 4th of July. It's not quite. I think there's another date where they celebrate the revolution, but not, Bastille is just when they opened up the prison and let all the political prisoners out, plus the murderers, rapists, and thieves. But, hey, there's a lot of political prisoners in there, too. All right. So we got some trouble on many fronts here. But I'll say this. Old Vlad, he thinks that he knows everything and can manipulate everything, and now he's angry because Sweden and Finland have applied to become part of NATO, and old Vlad said, hey, you become part of NATO, I'm going to move my nukes to the Baltic Sea, which will then cause even more countries to want to join NATO. All right. Let them. Put the Ukrainians on the job, and they can, destroy the supply train that's taken the nukes to the Baltic Sea. Why does anybody have to listen to what a mobster says anyway? Yeah, slap those... Excuse my French, I'm not going to go there. But yeah, you slap the mobster, especially if they're Nazi mobsters. We're going to denazify Ukraine. Yeah, you're going to bring the Nazis in. I gotcha, buddy. I'm not talking about the Azov regiment. Azov regiment? They're a little bit different. But yeah, it's they have a shady past. Let's not be beating around the bush on that. But they're decidedly different now. Nonetheless, let me tell you, they got to be reined in. We had our own issues during the revolution with, some folk that skirted the line. Maybe that's why we're having the same trouble we're having now here. We let those who helped us when they were just barely skirting the line because we needed their help, and now they're going to take advantage of it like they did in the 1860s. We've seen this before. I mean, this is a coda to a symphony we've all heard before. It is. All right. Better get into the curated part of the show because we do take some time to put an actual curated part of the show that has, I don't know, does it have a linear thread that tells a story, a beginning, a middle, and an end? Well, we hope so. At the top, of course, the Justice Department refusing a request from the House Oversight Committee for an inventory of Trump materials is the strongest sign yet that the feds are investigating Donald Trump. Well, good. On the rest of the menu, state and local governments across the United States are distributing millions of dollars they received from the American Rescue Plan to fight homelessness and not the homeless. The Republicans would take the money to fight the homeless, but we take it to try to lift people up so that, all boats rise the same. I know the rich people always think that when boats are rising, they're sinking. What? They can't be equal with me. If you're bringing me down to their level, no, we're coming up to yours. It's so exalted, can't we be there too? And they always say, no, how can it be exalted if you're here? Frontier Airlines has settled a discrimination suit brought by a group of flight attendants who claimed the carrier discriminated against them during pregnancy. Well, I mean, how are stewardesses supposed to be sex objects in the air when they're pregnant? I know some people are into that, but, the airlines have their reasons, don't they? And multiple U.S. government agencies issued a joint alert warning of the discovery of a suite of malicious cyber tools, like malware, that are capable of sabotaging the energy sector and other critical industries. And I'm putting a trademark on I told you so. Already have put the trademark symbol on it because I'm still in the application process of trademarking that. I'm going to. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where agricultural workers in the Horn of Africa are preparing for the most severe drought there in 40 years. And echoing the Kremlin line, as we spoke about at the beginning here, or earlier, French far-right presidential candidate Marine Le Pen warned against sending any more weapons to Ukraine or else. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the right of the page, is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln, who will be attending Netroots Nation in Pittsburgh this year. The first time in 2 years that in-person Netroots Nation meetups will be meeting up, and thank you, Kelly, for representing Netroots Radio once again on Media Row, as it is, I suppose it's not really going to be. I don't know. Is there going to be a Media Radio Row anymore? Probably not. I heard that that's not the case. But nonetheless, we will have a slew of interviews and other features from Netroots Nation coming up. So stay tuned for that. Thank you, Kelly. If you out there in Netroots Radio listening land would then look across our homepage at netrootsradio.com, near the bottom of that homepage there to the left, you will then notice the link to our Patreon site. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, and if you could possibly send us what you might spend on an espresso type coffee drink, for instance, or I don't know, maybe one of those Dairy Queen blasts or something. I don't know. Nonetheless, if you could send those funds to us instead once a month, it helps us pay our bills, and then we can fly under the radar, and somehow we're allowed to continue this powerhouse of resistance against dark forces arrayed against the United States of America and representative democracy worldwide. We can continue being a bulwark against those dark forces, and we have you to thank for allowing us to fulfill our civic duty as the founders originally intended so many years ago. In Netroots Radio case, I'm just going to keep mentioning this because it's our birthday period. Yeah, it's not just for one day. It's like a period of time. But 11 years of continuous. When I say continuous, I mean 24/7, 365. Continuous resistance radio. That's right. We like to we like to think that we edify and entertain. At least we like to think that. But anyway, thank you for your generosity in allowing us to sustain ourselves and bring this powerhouse of resistance to the fore. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, you can do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that, and thank you, Tom. If you follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam, you'll be able to have a quick way to the show notes and links diary, where you can find the real reportage, by the way, of the curated show here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Anyway, you can find those links on the diary that I put up daily for each day's show. And you can follow me at Justice Putnam to be able to find a quick way to do that. If you would like to follow the show on Twitter, you can do so at Cookbook West. And please pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., 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 etc. And you can also, of course, pick up the deep archive of the Netroots Radio Library over all these 11 years at the Internet Archive at archive.org. Okay. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is out of the American Independent by the great Oliver Willis. State and local governments across the U.S. are distributing millions of dollars they received from the American Rescue Plan to fight homelessness. President Joe Biden signed the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA, in March of 2021 after it passed Congress with only Democratic votes and unified Republican opposition. You know, the fifth columnists are amongst us, you know. Yes, they are. The law provided $21.5 billion in funding for emergency rental assistance, $5 billion for housing choice vouchers, and over the next 5 years, housing choice vouchers over the next 5 years, and $5 billion in new funding to support housing initiatives. Cities across the country have already started putting that money to use to increase housing equity in their communities. On Tuesday, 3 cities announced new housing initiatives using American Rescue Plan funds. The city of Fort Worth, Texas, approved the use of $5 million given to the state by the Rescue Plan to construct 165 units of permanent supportive housing. Officials in Anne Arundel County, Maryland, said they would use $3.19 million from the Rescue Plan to renovate an apartment building and convert it into transitional housing for unhoused people. And city officials in Augusta, Georgia, started work on a project financed by the Rescue Plan to construct 75 units of supportive housing in the region. The city, led by Mayor Hardy Davis Jr., is also considering a proposal to use $1.1 million from the plan for the Augusta Land Bank Authority to develop an affordable housing program. Those initiatives follow in the footsteps of other recent announcements in several states. In Florida, The federal funds will be used to build small homes for unhoused people in Orlando, fund the operation of a shelter in Daytona Beach, and construct a new building for a nonprofit serving unhoused people in St. Johns County. San Diego, California plans to use $12 million of its allocated funds to construct new permanent housing units. Green Bay, Wisconsin plans to use $23.7 million to fund affordable housing. Louisville, Kentucky will build and operate a campsite for unhoused people using $1.5 million. I like that. In Kentucky, you sleep outside in a tent. And Georgia will spend $28 million of its American Rescue Plan funds to expand resources for thousands of unhoused students in the state. Local officials who have already used the federal funds on housing initiatives have praised the assistance they received. In September, the city of Tempe, Arizona used $3.5 million of its allocated American Rescue Plan funds to buy a local motel building and convert it into a shelter with 40 temporary transitional housing units. I expect Republican governors in any state who got American Rescue Plan funds to make illegal the use of American Rescue Plan funds to help anybody. Associated Press staff bring us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Metro Shrimp and Grist Thursdays. Frontier Airlines has settled a discrimination lawsuit brought by a group of flight attendants who claim the carrier discriminated against them during pregnancy and while breastfeeding. Denver-based Frontier agreed to keep or change several policies to address the needs of pregnant and lactating personnel. In settling the litigation, the ACLU of Colorado, which represented the employees, announced yesterday, Wednesday. In their 2019 federal lawsuit, the 4 employees alleged that Frontier forced them to take unpaid leave for pregnancy-related absences and did not make it possible for them to pump breast milk while working. Frontier at the time insisted that it offered a number of accommodations for pregnant and lactating pilots and flight attendants within the bounds of protecting public safety, which is always our top priority. Under the settlement, Frontier agreed to clarify the pregnancy-related absences are not subject to disciplinary action. Of the Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Multiple U.S. government agencies issued a joint alert yesterday, Wednesday, warning of the discovery of a suite of malicious cyber tools created by unnamed advanced threat actors, I think it's Russia, that are capable of sabotaging the energy sector and other critical industries. Let's not forget that sometimes the Iranians and the North Koreans, too, The public alert from the Energy and Homeland Security Departments, the FBI, and the National Security Agency did not name the actors or offer details on the fine, but their private sector cybersecurity partners said the evidence suggests Russia is behind the industrial control system, disrupting tools, and that they were configured to initially target North American energy concerns. One of the cybersecurity firms involved, Mandiant, called the tools exceptionally rare and dangerous. In a report, it called the tool's functionality was consistent with the malware used in Russia's prior physical attacks, though it acknowledged that the evidence linking it to Moscow is largely circumstantial. The CEO of another government partner, Robert M. Lee of Dragos, agreed that a state actor almost certainly crafted the malware, which he said was configured to initially target liquefied natural gas and electric power sites in North America. Well. Like I said, I told you so. Let us now go to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Karen Hopkin. When you stop to think about it, it's not all that easy to speak. First, you have to think of something to say. Then, your brain has to tell your mouth to say it. Interruptions anywhere along this articulation pathway can impair the utterance and create something like a stutter. Now, studying a neurocomputational model of this complex process, researchers have found that stuttering stems from a glitch in the neural circuit that initiates speech. They presented their findings at the meeting of the Acoustical Society of America.
My main research interest is understanding how the brain translates thoughts,
Frank Gunther of Boston University,
into movements of the tongue and the other speech articulators to convey these thoughts to another person.
He says that stuttering is very common, and it happens in all languages. It's estimated that about 1% of the world's population stutters.
Despite this, and despite being studied at least as far back as the ancient Romans, our understanding of what causes stuttering has until recent years been very poor.
Numerous neural circuits come into play when it comes to generating speech, but the key drivers can be broken down into two main circuits.
One is an initiation circuit, and the other is an articulation circuit. To understand the function of these circuits, it's useful to consider something like the Energizer Bunny, which has an on-off switch, as well as a set of motors and gears that make the bunny walk and play drums when the switch is turned on.
The on-off switch initiates the movement, and the motors and gears make it happen. But which of these circuits can lead to a stutter? To find out, Gunther pieced together equations that represent how the neurons that form these circuits interact.
These equations describe neural activity in different parts of the brain, including the basal ganglia, cerebellum, and the cerebral cortex.
One set of equations represents the electrical activity of the neurons in all of these regions. Another, the strength of the connections they form with each other. That allows Gunther and his team to experimentally manipulate various aspects of the system.
And it allows us to test different versions of the story regarding the basal ganglia's involvement in stuttering by basically impairing different parts of the circuit and observing what happens in terms of speech output and also brain activity.
The basal ganglia, structures tucked beneath the brain's cerebral cortex, play a critical role in initiating a variety of motor activities.
They basically monitor our thoughts, sensations, and actions, and they determine which actions we should perform next.
That includes the muscles involved in speech.
Good doggy.
That's an example of the speech that comes from Gunther's computational model when everything's working as it should. But then, Gunther fiddles with the equations in the initiation circuit, reducing the connections here or boosting the stimulation there, which produces what sounds like a typical stutter. That says to Gunther,
Stuttering's a problem with the on-off switch. The motors and gears work fine, but the switch doesn't always turn on when it should, or it doesn't stay on as long as it should. This results in delays in initiating a word, or repetitions of the first part of the word. And these are the behaviors that we refer to as stuttering.
having a computer model allows Gunther to test out different hypotheses for why the initiation circuit fails. Whether, for example, it's an overabundance of activation or a degradation of neuronal signaling. Gunther says he'd like to combine his model with imaging studies that show the basal ganglia in action to see whether his predicted mechanisms play a role in people who stutter. The ultimate goal is to come up with precisely targeted treatments, like drugs that tweak the activity of the basal ganglia without inducing serious side effects.
Or possibly even implanted electrodes that modulate activity in particular parts of the basal ganglia circuit.
Which should make your basal ganglia as good as that. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Karen Hopkin.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Welcome to A Cup of Health with CDC, a weekly feature of the MMWR, the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. I'm your host, Dr. Kathleen Dooling. From a very young age, we're encouraged to eat fruits and vegetables. Unfortunately, many Americans are not getting the message. Dr. Seung-Hee Lee Kwon is with CDC's National Center for Chronic Disease Prevention and Health Promotion. She's joining us today to discuss the importance of eating enough fruits and vegetables. Welcome to the show, Seung-Hee.
Thank you for having me.
Seung-Hee, what is the recommended amount of fruits and vegetables?
The federal guidelines recommend that adults consume at least 1.5 cups to 2 cups of fruit and 2 to 3 cups of vegetables each day. This is for adults who get less than 30 minutes of physical activity a day. Adults who are more physically active need more calories and thus should be eating more fruits and vegetables. 1 cup is about 12 strawberries or 1 large tomato.
How many people consume the recommended amount of fruits and vegetables?
We found that very few adults are getting enough fruits and vegetables. Just 12% are eating the recommended amount of fruits, and less than 1 in 10 eat enough vegetables. And consumption is lower among men, young adults, and adults living in poverty.
Why is eating a diet rich in fruits and vegetables so important?
Eating a diet rich in fruits and vegetables can help with 3 things. 1, it can reduce the risk of many leading causes of illness and deaths, such as heart disease, type 2 diabetes, some cancers, and even obesity. It can also add important nutrients that are commonly missing in Americans' diet. And it can help with weight management if adults consume fruits and vegetables instead of other calorie-dense foods.
How can we meet the recommended daily intake of fruits and vegetables?
Try to fill half of your plate with fruits or vegetables at each meal or every eating occasion. Making fruits and vegetables the focal point of your meal will help you meet your recommendations. For example, recent studies have shown that adults get most of their fruit during breakfast and snacks. So you can try adding berries to your morning oatmeal or grab a piece of fresh fruit as an afternoon snack. For vegetables, most adults eat them at dinner, so try adding more into your lunch by adding a side salad or packing a snack of baby carrots or grape tomatoes.
Are canned or frozen products just as good as fresh?
All forms of fruits and vegetables count towards meeting the recommendations. For the most health benefits, make sure that the fruits and vegetables you consume have a limited amount of salt, butter, sugar, or creamy sauces. When selecting canned fruits, choose the ones with lowest sugars. And for canned or frozen vegetables, choose those lower in sodium.
Where can listeners get more information about eating a healthy diet?
Listeners can go to cdc.gov/nutrition or choosemyplate.gov.
Thanks, Seung-Hee. I've been talking today with Seung-Hee Lee Kwon about the importance of eating a healthy diet. Eating a diet rich in fruits and vegetables can help reduce the risk of many leading causes of illness and death and add important nutrients to your diet. Make sure you're eating enough. Until next time, be well. This is Dr. Kathleen Dooling for A Cup of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
This is a message from CDC.
After hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods, standing water and excess moisture help mold grow in your home, garage, and other structures. When you return to a home that has been flooded, know that you're likely to have mold. Mold puts your family's health at risk. If you have mold growing in your home, you should clean it up and fix other water problems, such as leaks in roofs, walls, or plumbing. Keep your children and pets out of affected areas until you've cleaned. Control moisture in your home to prevent mold growth. To remove mold growth from hard surfaces, use commercial products, soap and water, or a bleach solution of no more than 1 cup of household laundry bleach in 1 gallon of water. Follow the manufacturer's instructions. Never mix bleach with ammonia or other household cleaners. It will produce dangerous, toxic fumes. Open windows and doors to provide fresh air.
For more information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
The opposite of courage is not cowardice, it's conformity. And right there's the problem with the big money establishment that now controls the National Democratic Party. This group certainly wants Democrats to be the majority party, but for what purpose? Based on the policies they actually push, they seek progress without change, only offering policy tweaks that conform to the existing corporate structure. Their idea of change is what near beer is to beer, only not so satisfying. Worse, when grassroots progressives put real FDR-style Big D Democratic ideas on the national agenda, the Dem hierarchy turns into a bunch of fraidy-cat Democrats, muling that a living wage law, health care for all, breaking up monopoly power, child care, strengthening unions, and other fundamental changes are too extreme. Such boldness, they cry, will frighten voters. They are, of course, wrong and politically inept. For such direct benefit, we're on your side changes in today's corporate-run system are the Democrats' most popular proposals. Polls confirm that this is especially true among working-class voters in manufacturing towns where Democrats have been getting creamed. Surveys by a group called American Family Voices show that these people don't think the party is too socialist or too woke, but too meek, too corporate, and missing in action. After all, they've seen CEOs move their decent-paying jobs out. They've watched monopolies and Wall Street squeeze the lifeblood out of family farm opportunities. They've witnessed Amazon and Walmart eating Main Street alive. Where, they ask, is the Democratic Party that once stood for us? These people actually despise big corporations, love unions, and yearn for a party that'll join them in battling the bastards. This is Jim Hightower saying, the question they have for Democrats is basic. Do you just intend to hold office or use it?
Welcome to 60 Second Civics, the daily podcast of the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. Abraham Lincoln's message to Congress on July 4, 1861, emphatically expressed the president's determination to defend the Union against the Confederate rebellion. After reviewing the causes of armed conflict, he concluded that no choice was left but to call out the war power of the government, and so to resist force employed for its destruction by force for its preservation. Lincoln had taken a number of actions without the prior approval of Congress, including ordering a naval blockade of the Confederacy, calling up the state militias and suspending habeas corpus. Lincoln claimed that his actions were necessary to save the Union and the Constitution, trusting then, as now, that Congress would readily ratify them. He believed that nothing was done beyond the constitutional competency of Congress. So he asked Congress to support his policies, which it did quickly. Congress also retroactively approved Lincoln's actions to mobilize for war. That's all for today's podcast, 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1939. This was the day readers were first introduced to John Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath. The novel follows the fictional Joad family as they flee the Dust Bowl of 1930s Oklahoma. They go to California in the hopes of a better life. There, they find more workers than available jobs and struggle to make their way in the difficult system of farm migrant labor. The novel was a fictional telling of real-life experiences of more than 1 million people. Known as the Okies, these farmers left Oklahoma and other states during the Great Depression searching for work. The book won both the Pulitzer Prize and the National Book Award. The year after its release, John Ford directed the story into an acclaimed film. Actor Henry Fonda starred as Tom Joad. In the movie version, at the end of the film, Tom must leave his family to escape the police. Saying goodbye to his mother, he tells her not to miss him, saying,
"I'll be everywhere, wherever you can look. Wherever there's a fight so hungry people can eat, I'll be there. Wherever there's a cop beating up a guy, I'll be there. I'll be in the way guys yell when they're mad. I'll be in the way kids laugh when they're hungry and they know supper's ready. And when the people are eating the stuff they raise and living in the houses they build, I'll be there too."
Tom Joad became a powerful, lasting symbol of the poor and downtrodden fighting for a better life. Woody Guthrie recorded the ballad of Tom Joad, and Bruce Springsteen titled an album, The Ghost of Tom Joad.
Tom Joad, he pulls a prayer book out of his sleeping bag. Preacher lights up a buddy and takes a drink, waiting for when the last shall be first and the first shall be last.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Metro Shrimp and Grist Thursdays. We always begin, weather from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 40 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting temperatures to be a bit warmer than yesterday. We are expected to be in the low to mid-50s. Indeed. And cloudy early with peaks of sunshine expected late. We did have rain coming down in copious amounts overnight. Looks like we might have a bit of a drying out of sorts. And winds will be out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Some clouds overnight with lows in the low 30s. Winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10, and mostly cloudy skies tomorrow with highs in the mid-50s, winds light and variable, and then some more rain coming in tomorrow night. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon continue to rise, so I would suggest you continue to wear your mask and take all the other precautions that we have been taking. Oh, you haven't been taking them recently? You better start doing it again, please. Anyway, our confirmed cases have now gone up to 427 and 55, and our deceased have also increased by 7, and we now stand at 524 dead, because I guess they didn't want to wear masks, or somebody around them didn't. Pollen is rated as none outside the window here in Rogue River proper. The air quality index for the region is good at 20 parts per million, and that daytime UV index has come down in the moderate range to level 3. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 29.97 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles, and relative humidity is at 97%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that are crowdsources from around the world. London is 66 and mostly cloudy. Paris is 71 and sunny, with a slight chance of moving to the right. I hope they stop that. Rome is 73 and fair. Kyiv is 56 and sunny. Kabul is 62 and clear. Hong Kong is 77 degrees and fair. Tokyo is 51 and cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 64 and fair. San Francisco, California is 52 degrees and cloudy. And New York is a wonderful 75 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that are crowdsources from around the world. Wanjoey Kabakuru of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Agricultural workers in the East and Horn of Africa are preparing for their most severe drought in 40 years, as authorities warn that higher temperatures and less than normal rainfall was recorded by weather agencies in March and April this year. The Intergovernmental Authority on Development said rains will likely fail for a fourth consecutive year, triggering fears of increased cases of malnutrition, threats to livelihoods, and severe risks for 29 million people in the region. Meteorologists are linking the unfolding drought to human-caused climate change, which is leading to increased warming in the Indian Ocean, causing more frequent cyclones. Like most of Africa, the East and the Horn's economic mainstay is agriculture, which is rain-fed, making it vulnerable to extreme weather events.
Je te donne, c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Associated Press staff bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. French far-right presidential candidate Marine Le Pen warned against sending any more weapons to Ukraine and called for a rapprochement between NATO and Russia once Moscow's war in Ukraine winds down. Le Pen, an outspoken nationalist, white nationalist, by the way, who has long ties to Russia, also confirmed that if she unseats Macron in France's April 24th presidential runoff, she will pull France out of NATO's military command and dial back French support for the whole EU. Macron, a pro-EU centrist, is facing a harder-than-expected fight to stay in power, in part because the economic impact of the war is hitting poor households the hardest. France's European partners are worried that a possible Le Pen presidency could undermine Western unity as the U.S. and Europe seek to support Ukraine and end Russia's ruinous war on its neighbor. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up tomorrow for Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver.